Hey everyone, how's it going? Good to see you again this week. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed last week's session um, with our new friend Jan from Puerto Rico. I really enjoyed meeting her, and if you're ever in Puerto Rico, I'll connect you and you can go pay a visit. I highly recommend you stay at her place. It's a piano technician's paradise. And sorry we didn't get a chance to talk tech as much as we might have liked to, but she's more of a creator and impresario, but and had a great conversation though. Can everybody hear me okay? Getting me all right? Okay, awesome. So, and I see Carl Lieberman's here today. He's going to be here. He's going to be in multiple places. um, I got to visit Carl in this very house he's sitting in. Here, let me spotlight him for a second. Uh, so I got to hang out with Carl and see what it's like right outside that door, outside that window, sitting behind him. He's in Venice, California, and he let me stop by his house and pay a little visit, and we did a fun hour interview, and so we had a lot of fun, and that's what I'm going to play for today. But just like saying hello up front, we had a lot of fun, right, Carl?
It was great. What an honor and a privilege to be interviewed. So
Yeah, yeah. And I won't take up too much time with the intro because we did a full interview, but we found out we have a lot more connections that we thought we did, which is pretty cool. We don't talk about it in the episode, but Carl and I've got a web that connects us in many ways. All right, folks. So what I'm going to do is, quick intro. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour, brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting in edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. Find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. We've got our convention coming up in September. We'll be getting you'll be able to sign up very soon, hopefully this week, and we'll get more information out there on that. And yeah, beyond that, we'll put some links in the chats for reviews at the end. You get your feedback and feel free to have a little conversation while things are running in the chat. But yeah, without further ado, I'll play this interview that Carl and I did just a couple days ago in Venice, California, in his lovely home. Let me get that brought up here. All right. Hey everyone, guess what's going on right here? I'm sitting with our good friend Carl Lieberman in person, man. I'm just so happy to be here with you. um, I just so here's the funny thing. I'm traveling right now, and I'm staying with a friend in Venice, and I think oh yeah, doesn't Carl Lieberman live in L.A., right? He lives in L.A. somewhere, so I'll look him up and see about hanging out or doing something. And I said, give me your ad. He says, I'm in Venice. Oh, okay, so you're in Venice. I'm in Venice. And I said, give me your address. And he's like a 10-minute walk. I took a scooter. It was literally like 3 minutes to get here. So this is awesome. I'm here in person with Carl Lieberman. So we thought we'd do there's another pre-recorded radio hour, but I thought it would be fun to just take this opportunity to hang out in person with Carl and get some fun stories and info and knowledge out of this fine fellow. So how you doing today, Carl?
I'm doing pretty good. Just FYI, I had prostate surgery 6 days ago. It was completely successful. I've been back
Yeah,
home for 3 days. I'm chilling out. I'm not working this week. I'm going to the PTG convention next week.
awesome.
I'm really fine. Thank God for modern medicine. Everything went as well as it could.
Yeah, that is excellent to hear. I'm very glad to hear it. So yeah, let's get jumping into some interesting topics here. So one of the things that I think is interesting, being here in Venice, if you haven't been to Venice in California, you definitely have to visit. A lot of cool stuff going on. It's one of those communities where There's just an explosion of creativity and kind of fresh thinking ideas, and just a fun place to hang out. There's art, there's music, and but it's also like a fun kind of beach area. You can go to the beach and you can hang out and just be a beach bum as well. So I actually met a guy last night. I was at an art gallery here, which is called Space,
And no, it's called the Budman
the
Studios.
Budman Studios. And I met a guy named Jim Budman, and he was really cool. And he even gave me a pair of fun glasses, which he was wearing. He had these blue glasses, and I liked him, so he gave me a pair. But I was just talking to Carl, and I was like, "Oh, do you know this guy Jim?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I know Jim, right?" And I thought, "Oh, that of course you do, of course you do." And I think what we could talk about a little bit here is sort of networking as piano technicians. I think folks like Carl probably do a really incredible job of not having networking really feel like it's like this, because some people get like weirded out when they think about networking, like it's kind of sleazy and you're trying to get something out of people. But I feel like these relationships are a good example. I don't know for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if you got some work because you know
Well,
this guy,
well,
or
so
you got referrals or something.
let me talk a little bit about.
Yeah,
It's an odd connection. Jim Budman
yeah,
is an artist. He had a studio in New York 40 years ago. He recreated the studio here in Venice. He's a real Venice institution. He has this studio with 10 units, and different artists are in these different units. One of these units is from a friend of mine, Stanley Bishop, who's the technologist for that whole studio. He's a real artificial intelligence, machine learning guy. He and I have become friends over the last 5 years. I'm actually on the board of his foundation at Space Post, which is in the Budman Studios. And at Stanley, I was on the Piano Technicians Guild Foundation board. And a number of years ago, we put together an exhibit from our museum in Kansas City, and we partnered with NAMM, and we had a display at the NAMM show in Anaheim. And I put together a history of tuning hammers and created a concomitant thing of a history of tuning hammers. We put this whole thing together at NAMM, and then after NAMM, this exhibit traveled to the NAMM Museum in Carlsbad, about 50 miles south of here. And my friend Stanley Bishop got his crew, and they came together with Matterport cameras, and they recorded this entire exhibit when it was at the museum. And it's at ptgf.space. It's not up right now, but it will be, and we can see this whole thing. And by doing that, I met Jim Budman, and I met all the people at the studios. And I just want to say, I've lived in Venice for 49 years. And I've lived in Venice for 49 years. I've lived in this house for 48 years. And Venice was a beatnik community. It's always sort of been a kind of the way we like to put it is Venice Beach where the debris meets the sea. And it's kind of the Greenwich Village of Los Angeles. But what has happened, it's being rebranded. It's being rebranded as Silicon Beach, because down the block, less than a mile from me, is Google, and there's Snapchat used to have their headquarters here, and there's all these things. And so we have all these 30-something-year-olds who are super techie who have moved into the area. And one of the things that has been interesting, through my friend Stanley, who used to work for Google, who's a real heavy hitter in the tech world, and I've met him and a number of his 30-year-old colleagues. And I'm kind of the mascot. I'm the old guy who they love that I'm interested in their stuff, and they love to hear stories about me and my life. And when 50 years ago I was a techie, so I have contact with a lot of 30-year-olds, and I'm integrated in that little part of this community. And I've learned about venture capital startups. I've helped these people put together pitch decks, because even though they know so much more than me and I'm know secondhand, I'm just more literate than these people are. I'm better with language than these people are because I'm an old guy. So I help them make their pitch decks better to communicate with people. And I have a son of my parents' friends who I've known since he was a wee tyke, who's works for Peter Thiel Capital Management, and so I'm able to run a lot of these pitch decks by through the Peter Thiel team and help to raise money for these startups. And so it's just it keeps me young. I feel so fortunate to have just because of where I live, just because, and I met Stanley in line at a coffee shop, a local coffee shop here in Venice, and it's one of those odd connections that has turned into a real, genuine friendship. And it's just being in the right place at the right time. So Venice is a really creative hotbed, and it keeps me my creative juices flowing.
So tell me about this process of doing this exhibit with the Matterport camera, which I wasn't familiar with until recently, but it's kind of a camera where you can put into a space and it basically helps you create a virtual
Right, it creates a 3D
representation.
scan. It creates a 3D scan, and it allows you to do, all the museums are using this.
Right.
MoMA, all the big museums, where you can walk through, where you can do a virtual tour of a museum.
Yeah.
And then you can using your goggles, you can then select something that you're looking at, and then you have hyperlinks. So I created hyperlinks. So if you look at the let's say the Lincoln piano. We have a hyperlink that tells you all about this piano that was on stage the night that Lincoln was killed. Or if you look at the history of tuning hammers, you can do a hyperlink, and I have 12 different tuning hammers from T hammers with oblong pins up to the Rayburn and Falk and Leviton state-of-the-art hammers. And you can then do a hyperlink to the website for each of these hammers and learn more about these hammers. It's a way of memorializing this thing that the foundation board put together. And through my contacts, and I was able to create independent funding to create this virtual museum that will be there and be accessible for piano technicians for a long time to come.
So is the idea for this come because you're kind of in the mix with the tech stuff and you're like, oh, hey, that's a thing. Let me see if we can use that to do. Like, how did you decide, hey, I'm actually going to do this?
Okay, so I joined the foundation board about 3 years ago.
Okay.
They asked me to be on the board. Joyce Meekins and Melanie. What's Melanie's last name? You know who runs
Brooks?
Melanie Brooks.
Okay, yeah.
A senior moment,
No problem.
and they asked if I would be on the board, and so I was recruited for the board, and I was very happy. It was I think what the foundation is doing with we give out 8 scholarships to people to finish their exams. We pay for their final exam. We paid for their registration at the PTG convention, and we're trying to create RPTs. And we're giving back. It's one of the best things that we can do with our money. These people started it. I was just pulled along for the ride. But when I was on the board and started to help out with how to market ourselves better, how to do things better, I found out that they had already created this partnership with NAM to bring a piece of our, Fred Sturm was really instrumental in putting this whole thing together and making it happen. And when I found out it was happening, I said, guys, I know young people who could record this. I have access to independent funding I can get to pay for it. It won't come out of our budget. We can put this together and we can make this last forever. I think it's something we should do. They gave me the green light. They said, knock yourself out. It's not costing us any money. You're going to ride point on this. Sure, we're along for the ride. And I said, great, I'm happy to put some energy into this. And that's how it came about. I tagged along.
And maybe it's more anonymous and you don't need to go into detail, but so the independent funding, is it somebody that wanted like their sponsor name on it or just?
No, so I've been the president of the California State Piano Technicians Board. That is no longer active. We no longer put on conferences.
Oh, okay.
We had a war chest of about $40,000.
Okay.
The successor organization is Westpac, is we put on conferences in the Western United States. We gave half of our endowment to Westpac, and the board at this point consists of me and Bruce Stevens.
Hmm.
And we gave half of it to Westpac to help bankroll Westpac putting on conferences. And the remaining 20,000, it can be used at our discretion. And so we budgeted $4,000 to do this. We credited California State piano technicians as funding this virtual museum tour, and so it was a good use of our funds. We're happy to bankroll things that are, for the betterment of piano technicians. Bruce and I thought this was a good project, and so we green-lighted it.
Perfect. Wow, that's awesome. So how about we shift a little bit to kind of just some more technical things, we could talk about. Um, I'm curious, like, I don't know, we could talk about like the climate here. I could tell it's going to be a little bit humid because you're by the water. Maybe there's some special things you've noticed you have to deal with here. Yeah.
Well, let me talk about it. Listen, I am so privileged for a million reasons, but as a piano technician, Los Angeles is basically piano technician heaven. You people who live in the Midwest, back east, who have huge humidity swings, not unusual to have 30-cent swings between summer and winter on your pianos. I have none of that. The
Right.
humidity is fairly constant. Living
Okay.
at the beach is even better because the ambient humidity, the swings are the pianos I work on, honestly, okay, I'm a good professional piano technician. I do, I know what I'm doing. And so pianos that I maintain, if I tune your piano once every year, I do a 10-cent pitch raise. I come back a year later. I left the piano at 3 cents sharp. It's going to be exactly at 3 cents sharp. I'm going to tune your piano in 15 minutes. And I'm going to screw around and do some things to your piano because my rule of thumb is don't leave someone's house within an hour. You got to look like you're doing something. But the reality is I can do a lot of 15-minute piano tunings that are going to be killer piano tunings because once I set up a piano, the humidity is very forgiving and the pianos are very, very stable. And so it's very easy to be a piano technician in Los Angeles. When I tune pianos 4 times a year or 2 times a year or 1 time a year, I have very little to do with the pianos. Once I've done a pitch raise on a piano, I'm never going to do a second pitch raise on a piano.
Wow.
And so, the one caveat, I do a lot, less of it now because I'm winding down. But historically, I did a lot of every week, every 2 week, every 4 week tunings at venues, at hotels, at places. And what was the bane of my life was in the wintertime and in the spring, we get hot winds off of the desert that blow. Normally, the weather comes off of the ocean. The humidity of the ocean is fairly constant. Relative humidity is a temperature dependent variable, so there is little bit of fluctuation. But the temperature at the ocean, is within a 20-degree swing summer to winter. And so the relative humidity is fairly constant. So the humidity blowing in from west to east is fairly constant. A couple of times a year, we get these hot winds that come off of the desert and blow east to west, called Santa Ana winds. And these wipe out piano tunings, okay? And just a little digression, just FYI, piano humidity effect on pianos is asymmetric. In other words, increases in humidity have a smaller effect on pianos than decreases in humidity. Why? The strings go over the bridge. It's not completely horizontal. There's a downward vector. There's a load of the strings pushing down on the bridge. Less than 200 pounds, but there's a downward push. This is your down bearing, okay? When humidity comes in and the soundboard curls up, the system is pushing against this 200-pound load. So it's constraining the upward sharpness of the piano. When the dryness comes in and the curve flattens out, you're going down in the same direction as the load. So you go down 3 steps and go up 1 step. That is why over time pianos get flatter and flatter, because every cycle the piano gets a little bit flatter than the previous cycle. Pianos do build back up when the summer, when the humidity comes in. So as someone, and I'd like to talk, this is actually an interesting thing. I've discussed this with my colleague Dan Levitin, who is a giant in our field. But just FYI, a good friend, we were just in Brooklyn and had dinner with him and his wife.
Oh, nice.
Really wonderful. But how do you think about stability in pianos? I wrote an article about this for the journal called Stability, Stability, Stability. When I'm working in hotels or performance venues, jazz clubs, where I'm tuning the piano every week, and a Santa Ana's come in and they wipe out the tuning. They can knock it 5 cents, 10 cents flat, but mostly they take the lower octave of the tenor of the plain wound strings. They're kind of hinged from, let's say, 12 notes above the lowest note, and the lowest notes, let's say, may fall by 10 cents, and the upper note of the hinge may fall by 3 cents. And the question is, should I come in here? I'm a cyber tuner guy. I use Concert Smart Tune. I can do a 10-cent pitch correction on a piano that's concert ready in 1 pass. That's just the reality of it. And should I do that? Should I go in there and roll up my sleeves and just put it in Concert Smart Tune mode and correct those notes and to retune the piano and say I'm on the job? And the answer is no. You shouldn't. Now, this is controversial. There are people who think every time you do a tuning, you should do the best possible tuning. I am not one of those people. I think of stability as an integral of piano playability over time. And so if I come in and do the perfect pitch correction, when the humidity now returns to normal, those notes on the lower end of the tenor bridge are now going to be 4 cents sharp. And which is, and then I'll have to correct it, and then it's a constant pitch correction, which becomes an asymptotic correction, getting closer and closer. What I will do in that situation is I will tune in fine tune mode. I will tune all of the notes to where I want them to be, and some of the notes, those 10-cent flat notes, will drop 2 cents. Okay. 2.5 cents. And I will leave the tuning with some of the notes at the bottom of the tenor section being 2.5 cents flat. Well, as long as the unisons are good, no one's going to hear it, okay? It's going to be good enough for the next performance. It'll be fine. But as the humidity comes back in, those notes will return to 0. And a week later, when I come back to this piano, lo and behold, it's going to be perfectly in tune and I'm going to have nothing to do. Okay? So I'm thinking about the long-term stability of the piano. And I do this whether it's a home piano, whether it's a recording studio piano, whether it's a stage piano, whether it's anything. I think of stability as an integral of piano playability over time. I'm not a fanatic of putting the best possible tuning. Of course, if I'm coming in and I'm tuning the piano for Elton John, who's recording at my studio, I'm not screwing around like this. I'm trying to make it as good as it can possibly be. If I'm working at the concert hall where I'm working and, a world-class pianist is playing the piano that night, I'm not thinking about playability over time. I'm trying to make the piano as good as it can be for the concert that night, okay? There are times when I override this, but in most situations, I am taking a longer view. My job is to bring stability to the instruments that I maintain, and I'm trying to make them as stable as possible over a reasonable time frame. So that's how I deal with humidity swings.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I thought from the beginning that because I feel the humidity, I'm from those climates that move a lot. So then when I feel humidity, I think about, okay, well, the humidity is going to go away and then we're going to swing a lot. But as long as the humidity stays consistent, it's actually not bad, right?
So for instance, I've worked for Princess Cruises for the last 49 years. And so I've been on thousands of cruise ships over the last 49 years. I work for other companies, but I'm kind of the staff guy for Princess. And people naively think that pianos on cruise ships go out of tune all the time. There's all the humidity, there's the vibration of the ship, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'm working for Princess. No one has been on board the ships for 20 months. The pianos haven't been touched. The cruises are just beginning right now in Seattle this week. Our first cruise just left from Seattle for a one-week cruise. In 2 more months, we're going to begin cruises here in Los Angeles. So the ships, as they come online, what they have me do is for the 4 key pianos on each ship, I'm spending 3 hours a piano over 2 days to bring the pianos back. That means I'm doing a pitch correction. The pianos have gotten 15 cents flat. I'm doing a pitch raise and tuning. I'm leaving these pianos just killer in tune at 3 cents sharp. That's always my target. I'd rather be 3 cents sharp than at pitch. And I'm spending another 90 minutes to 120 minutes shaping the hammers, really cleaning the pianos thoroughly, touch-up regulation, touch-up voicing, making the pedals function optimally, just bread and butter piano tech work. When I work on pianos on cruise ships, these pianos get no maintenance. When I'm on board, I'm typically on board for 2 hours. I'm doing 6 pianos. I've got a 2-hour, 2.5-hour window. The people who are sitting in the lounges don't want to hear me working on the pianos. They scream and yell at me. People are entitled. Stop that. You know, they scream at me. The new people are coming on at 11:30. The musicians are starting playing again. I have a 2 to 3 hour window to work on the pianos. I basically am just doing tuning, broken strings, broken repair notes, and that's all I do. So the first time I see the pianos, I really spend as long as I can. This situation, I'm actually doing, a 3-hour maintenance on each piano, getting them ready for the next year. And some of these pianos I'll be responsible for. Some of them are going to other venues, and I'm making life easy for the next piano technicians. Mm-hmm. When I started out, I was a poser. I didn't know what I was doing. Fake it before you make it. I lived off of the good work of a lot of the guys who were much better than me. So I'm kind of paying it forward. I'm the guy now who really does the work. And the guys who follow me get easy street because they're following me. It's, and that's just the way it should be,
That makes sense. Yeah, this has been interesting to hear about the humidity levels and things. The one follow-up on humidity, though, I was curious, because it's relatively high. An extreme example, the most extreme humidity example that I had experience of was when I was in Cartagena in Colombia. And I got to see some pianos there because I was traveling, and I find it interesting to visit local pianos. And there was a piano in a hotel. Beautiful. I mean, man, if this piano had been really preserved, I think incredible. And I opened it up just to take a look inside. And I thought it was just scare tactics when, Damp Chaser will say things like, you could have mold growing in your piano. Oh, you got to have your humidity control. And I kind of thought, that's just scaring me. That's never going to happen. I've never seen. I saw it. I saw things growing on piano felt hammers and things like that, and I was like, "Whoa, man, that's scary." Do you see anything like that here?
Well, so listen, let me tell you a story. No, this is piano tuner heaven. You
Okay.
don't see anything. I have pianos at the beach, really good pianos that after a couple of years, everything is rusted. Okay? So I'm a big believer in putting string covers, high quality wool string covers in pianos. Sometimes I'll put a Damp Chaser rod, a 15-watt thing underneath. Mostly though, I put the covers on. Okay, and the first time I see a piano, if they don't have rusted strings, I just tell people you got to spend $500 and put a cover on. You know, just you'll trust me, you'll thank me later. Okay, so that's the main thing. But you know, my wife and I have traveled extensively. The last 20 years before the pandemic, every year we took a major vacation for 2 or 3 weeks every summer and went all over the planet. And when I travel, I always take a minimum set of tools with me. And almost everywhere I go, I find an excuse to do a pro bono tuning somewhere.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, me too.
And we were in Costa Rica, and the hotel we were staying in had a little outdoor amphitheater, and they informed me that in a couple of days they were going to have a pianist playing there, and they had like I think it was a Kauai KG2, KG3 type of thing. And I said, do you mind if I take a look at it? And I took a look at it. And they said, oh yeah, we've had it serviced, but and I get there and all the action centers are sluggish. And it's got a mediocre tuning at best on it. And I said, do you mind if I make it a little better for the concert? They said, oh God, would you please? And so basically what I did is I had a little bottle of Protec, and I hit the hammer flanges, and I borrowed a hair dryer from the hotel, and put heat on the flanges, and I did a real tuning on the piano. Okay, and the piano played so much better and was for real in tune.
Wow.
And so and I've done things like that in lots of venues that I've been in, and I feel, God, I've tuned pianos in Russia and China and Costa Rica and God knows where. And it's like they're doing me a favor to let me do this, because I don't care. I'm not going to get paid. What's the difference, But if I just to say I touched a piano in these different venues, it makes me feel good.
Yeah, yeah. You're a man after my own heart. Like I really had fun when I was traveling in Peru and Latin America. I made a little blog out of it and would write posts about these various pianos. And it is interesting to see the environments that they live in, particularly when I was in Arequipa, Peru.
I've been in Arequipa, yeah.
It's very dry. It's
Yes.
basically a desert climate, except for the rainy season, you'll see some rain. And yeah, I mean, all those pianos.
Let me just tell you a story. We
Yeah,
were in
yeah.
Peru. We had an amazing couple of weeks in Peru, did all the obvious things. But we went up to Lake Titicaca, which is at 14,000 feet, and we stayed there. And while we were staying there, just random luck of the draw, the night that we were there was an international festival of classical guitar. And in the junior high school gym, they had world-class classical guitarists from all over the planet coming to give a concert. And it was, so we're sitting in the junior high school gym at night, my wife and I, to watch this
Which town
concert.
was this again?
This is in Lake Titicaca,
Okay, right.
the town right on Titicaca. Arequipa is at 7,500 feet, and that's the gateway to going up to Quito and Titicaca and these whole sort of things. And we were wearing our down jackets in this thing, and the guitarists are on stage in a semicircle. There's 7 of them playing, and they've got a fire, like a charcoal fire, to keep them warm. They're playing their guitars, and it's like the worst conditions, but to keep their things. It's so dry, it's so cold. They got a fire in front of them in the city, in the semicircle. But these guys are total pros. One of the great concerts I've ever attended. I just couldn't believe how lucky I was to just luck into this thing. And for all of you, if I know this is just privilege, and I have enough money to travel, blah blah blah. I get it. Everyone does the best they can. Budget for a vacation. I swear to you, you need to take a real vacation every summer. You've got to do this. It's part of being a good person. It's part of having a good life. Trust me, when I look back, the vacations that we took are the 20 of the high points of my life. As they say on people's deathbed, no one ever says, I wish I had worked more at the office. You've just got to, it's your only life that you have. You've got to focus on your life. You've got to make your work pay enough so that you can live a good life. That's just do that. Don't you invest in yourself. Invest in yourself.
Yeah, agreed. I know there's those types of people out there. Some of them are even in my family who don't care to travel, and I think that's okay. But if you have any inkling for it, I think it's a benefit all around. It can come back in ways that you might not
Well, look,
imagine.
you
Yeah.
talked about networking.
Yes.
Okay, listen. I'm just one of the most interesting people you're ever going to meet, no matter who you are. Okay, that's just the reality
And
of it.
one of the most humble.
Yeah, I'm just saying this because you guys are my
Yeah.
my peers, and I don't normally say anything like this. It's idiotic to say something like this. Okay, but here's the reality. I'm successful as a piano technician because of it. I'm a good piano technician. I've had reasonable training. I've had a lot of experience. I care about what I'm doing. I do good quality work. I'm not a great piano technician. I haven't had factory experience. I'm not a great piano technician. I'm just not. I'm a good professional field service piano technician, okay? But people can't tell the difference in almost no situations. I've worked for world-class pianists. They can tell the difference. But in most situations, people cannot tell the difference. And what they do, it's the impression that you make on people. It's how you present yourself. It's your self-image. It's your fund of knowledge. It's your musical knowledge. The more you know about music, the better off you are. You need to educate yourself about music. It helps to play an instrument. It helps to care about music. It helps to listen to music. It helps to go to concerts. It helps to be part of the music community. And so, because I've traveled, because I've had an interesting life, I can converse with anyone about anything. And that's part of being successful as a piano technician. The more that you're able to meet people wherever they are and connect with them on their terms and make them feel that you get them, you're going to be more successful as a piano technician. It puts more dollars in your pocket. So, be an interesting person, not just because you only get one life, and that's the number one commandment, lead an interesting life. It will help in your business to be a successful piano technician.
Yeah, agreed. And I think an interesting aspect of that too, what you said, it's like, as they say, it's the interested people that are interesting, right? And so what I noted about what you said is that you've been able to converse, right, with people. And what it really is that you've probably taken an interest. You take an interest in the people that you meet. You hear about their story, and then you have another conversation with someone else, and that just helps inform how you have a conversation with someone else. And that's what makes you interesting, is that you're able to hold those conversations and bring interesting things to the table.
I honestly, I consider myself a generalist. I'm a specialist in piano technology, obviously. I had a more specialized university education, but I've been intellectually curious my whole life. My dad had only a high school education. He was a playwright and a poet. He was self-educated, working class intellectual, read voraciously. I will never read a fraction of what my dad read. But my dad was a guy who knew interesting people. Everyone liked to have him around because he could hold his own with anyone. I'm the same way. I'm interested. I'm curious. I just throw this out there. But I have a close friend who won the Nobel Prize in Physics 3 years ago. I spend a lot of time having dinner with him frequently. I can't believe that he's willing to spend the time to hang out and talk with me. We've become friends, and he's not at all condescending. But I have a wide range of people that I interact with all the time. And it forces me to learn about what they do. And it forces me to be more curious. And it's a privilege to be around other people who are expert at what they do. And these people, by the way, are not above asking me about what I do, and they're curious about what I do. And so my friend Barry, who's the physicist, he just gave a talk in front of thousands of people worldwide on curiosity. This is someone at the highest level as a scientist in the world. And the thing that he is focused on, the thing that drives him, is curiosity. And I can't say, we as piano technicians, there's nothing that could be better for what we do, both as in technical curiosity, but just general curiosity. Keep an open mind. Keep an open mind about everything.
What's his name? Barry
Barish. He won
Barry
the 2017 Nobel Prize in Physics. He led the team at LIGO, the Light Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. It's the second largest science project in the world after CERN. He has 1,000 physicists working for him at LIGO, and they first observed gravitational waves. Gravitational waves is the most, it's a new spectrum to observe the universe. Right now, almost everything we know about the universe is the electromagnetic spectrum. So we observe light, redshifts, etc. That's how we know everything about the world that we live in. When very, very heavy objects like black holes or neutron stars have an event happen to them, they create a ripple in space-time. This was postulated by Einstein. And these ripples in space-time are what we call gravitational waves. The ultimate ripple is the Big Bang, okay? They measure these gravitational waves to a level of 10 to the minus 23rd. That's the finest level of that they can look at. And so when 100 years from now, as Barry said, it took us 400 years to really understand electromagnetism. It may take us 400 years, maybe we'll be better to really understand gravitational waves, but we may get back to 1 to the 10 to the minus 23rd of the Big Bang. That's about as close as we can get at this point. But we're going to start to understand, we're going to have a completely new spectrum to observe the universe with. This will be the gravitational wave spectrum. We've just, in the last 3 or 4 years, learned that it exists. We know very little about how to make sense of anything. We're learning, we're smart, we're getting better. It may take us 100 years to really start to make use of this. I suspect we're going to do it sooner than that. But this is going to be a whole other spectrum to understand the universe from. It's really significant.
That's awesome. And then, you could make a gravitational wave giant piano where you play the pitches on the fabric of space-time, that would be pretty fun.
No, imagine, they're measuring things at 10 to the, this is an interferometer. They send out light 2.5 kilometers perpendicular to each other, and they come back. And if there's a slight delay, then a gravitational wave interfered. Right. And this goes back to Einstein in 1916, had the incredible experiment where there was a group of people who went to Kenya and watched the solar eclipse. And he's predicted that the waves coming around the sun from this solar eclipse would not take a straight path, and they would be get here a little bit slower. And in fact, we were able to measure that there was a slight time delay of the light coming around the sun on the solar eclipse. And it was the confirmation, the first real world confirmation for the general theory of relativity. And then Einstein went on to postulate that there would be gravitational waves and this whole thing. We're in a, human creativity is astounding. And of course, the set of things we know is infinitely larger than the set of things we don't know. So humility is always in order.
Yeah. The set of things we don't know is infinitely larger. Well, I want to take it back to some piano stuff. That's been fascinating, though. And I would love, the fact that you get to talk to this guy is incredible. Back to what I was saying about being in Arequipa, just to finish up that loop. I found pianos, it's super dry there, and so combating dryness is, basically impossible. Like any soundboard's gonna get cracks in it within a year or something. I mean, it's just it's really terrible. An interesting situation. I was trying to wrap my head around how to resolve that. I mean, you literally can't just like put a room humidifier. Like the way that they build construction isn't even meant to enclose the humidity in
That's
a
right.
significant way. But this one guy, I went to this wealthy guy's house who had basically founded one of the major alpaca, clothing makers in Peru. It's a huge industry in Peru. And this guy had, he had like 7 or 8 hot, cars, historical cars in his little garage, and he had a piano in his house, and it was next to the pool, the indoor pool, and that was the best. That
Well,
was the best
brilliant.
solution to the humidity problem. That I could think of.
Necessity
I know
is
he
the
did
mother
not.
of
I
invention.
know he did not do that on purpose, but normally I would not advise you put a piano next to the pool unless you're in Arequipa.
That's a brilliant thing because the ambient humidity, the pool is
Yeah,
at a
yeah.
constant temperature. The ambient humidity is going to be pretty constant.
Yeah, that's pretty great. The next topic I wanted to address with you. So I come to Carl's house and I'm looking around here. By the way, he's got all kinds of cool artifacts, which we always see him behind this wall, and then that goes out onto the street. That's where I'm always used to seeing him. So it's fun to be here in his space. Sorry, I won't be able to communicate it fully. But he's got some really, really cool artifacts here from his travels. And he showed me some things like that. But I also asked him, like, okay, so, do you have like a workshop space? What's this place like? What's your house like? How do you keep it? I know, and for my sake, for many of the past several years, I haven't been able to have a workshop space. Just just the space constraints. I just moved into a house that has a garage, which is kind of nice. I can keep at least a piano in there to like tinker around with. But I think you said like you just got like a room with like a little butcher block in it that you can set like an action on top of. Got some jigs, but nothing fancy, nothing incredible. Yeah, I want to hear
Let me
more
speak to
about
that.
it.
So, I've been doing this a long time. When I started, I had a really good butcher block with good lighting. I have the Jarris regulating jigs. And I would bring actions home and I would, file a hammers or even replace a set of hammers or, do the whole thing, regulate the piano, do everything, and then return it. I haven't done that for 30 years. I haven't brought an action home. Okay? I do everything at the piano. And I don't, it's funny. You should gravitate to do the type of work that you like to do. For me, bringing an action home and having an action job that I'm responsible for doing at home is like having a term paper that's due. It hangs over me. I don't like it. I don't mind working all day. I don't mind going. I don't mind working every day. I don't mind. I like to go to work, but I do all of my work at the piano in the field. So in these days, it's very, very rare. The largest job that I would do is replace hammer shanks and flanges on a piano. And even that I do very infrequently. The largest job, I almost always work with existing parts on pianos. I shape hammers frequently and regulate in voice accordingly. But that's the largest job that I usually do. And I do that in the piano at the site. So I bring, I have a car. This is Southern California. I've got a lot of stuff in the car. So I've got everything with me. And I don't ever bring anything home. Now, it limits me. There's a level of work that maybe I could or should do that I don't do, but I'm spoiled. I do the type of work that I like to do. And for me, that's on site at the piano. Dan Levitin, has put it this way. He's a field service piano technician. I would say the same thing. I'm a field service piano technician.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's useful. I mean, just coming as far as I have. I mean, I've been a field service piano technician. At this point, I'm also like a piano technician community, ambassador or something, right? Like I found different places where I have a niche and I do something well, and I think that for the folks that are still trying to establish what they do, right? I think it's important to try things, right? Like to go ahead and try doing something. Don't be afraid to push yourself into things that you're a little bit intimidated by, right? But I think that that's a great thing to because I think it's easy when you're engaging with other piano technicians, and maybe you kind of even get a little bit of a vibe, like, oh, you don't recover keys. I mean, come on, like how easy is that, And it's like, yeah, I just don't do it.
So let me speak to that. I'd like to, remember my dear friend David Anderson, uh, co-host of the Radio Hour and a wonderful person. David, had so much wisdom that he shared with us. David talked about failing upward in his career. I can say the same thing. I have failed upward in my career. You know, and what Ethan just said, don't be afraid to try things. The only way to get better at things is to try things. Give it your all, learn as much as you can. You're going to make mistakes. The only people who don't make mistakes are people who don't do anything. If you do things, you're going to make mistakes. Okay? And again, you know, that little voice in our head, I'm not good enough. I'm around other piano technicians. They are so much better than me. They do so much more than me. I'm really a faker. I just do the same kind of BS stuff over and over again. Why am I an expert? Why are any of you listening to me? Oh my God, I'm pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. You've got to learn to control that voice. We all have that voice. No matter what level you're at, that voice will creep in there. I'm not good enough. Other people are better than me. Don't bullshit yourself. You've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to be honest with people. Try to get better. Do all of these things. I'm not making this a cop out, but that voice does no good for anyone ever. You've got to have positive voices. When I'm around other people, I want to be supportive of other piano technicians. David, God bless him, David was really an expert in many things in tuning, okay? But David always, no matter who he was talking with, he wanted to give you more confidence, to lift you up, okay? I'm not at David's level as a technician, but I want to do the same thing. When I'm talking to any of you out there, I want to make you feel better about yourself, about what you do. I want to empower you to do more. I don't want to intimidate anyone, and I have no business intimidating anyone. I'm not that special as a piano technician.
Yeah, I think that's a great theme for the industry moving forward, and reaching into the past of just us supporting each other's, greatness, and helping each other find our niche with what we do, and internally also the opposite of those voices that say, hey, a story from me recently, actually, like it's sort of recently. So my wife used to be my girlfriend, right? We picked up a piano on Craigslist, a cute little piano, one of these Melody Grands. Some people like them, some people don't. I think they're really cool. And we had this deal where we said, we're going to restore this thing together. And I'll work on the interior. She knew a little bit about refinishing. She'd do the refinishing. And we weren't sure, but we thought we'd kind of like fix it up and sell it, It has been like 10 years since we got that piano. And it actually is beautiful. She did most of her part of like refinishing it. And I actually did like from the get-go, I got really ambitious and I re-regulated it. It played, you wouldn't even believe how great it plays. But it needed new keys. And I brought up key recovering earlier. And they just had chips on the tops. And it's like, come on, you got to get these keys recovered. And I just kept telling myself, Ethan, you got to do that. I mean, that's a thing that you've got to do. But as I said earlier, we went from place to place to place. I didn't have a router. Like, I didn't have, all of the jigs and things where it just makes it quick and easy to recover keys. But I kept telling myself and being sort of down on myself that, like, I should be the one that does this because I'm going to restore this piano. And finally we gave in. and just maybe like 6 months ago, and sent out the keys to this guy. If you haven't used him yet, I don't know. There's plenty of resources, but there's a guy named Michael Kurta. That's all he does. He just
He's great at it.
he just does it.
He's
He
great
does
at
a
it.
great job. He knows there's no questions about it. You just put the keys in the box, you ship them off to him, and he ships them back to you, and they're all packed up nice and ready to go. And you just have to install them, which is its own thing, But like he has them pretty much ready to go. And I'm just so glad that we went and took that step because it was so stressful. So the other side of like telling yourself in the voices of what you're not good at, it's not that you're not good at it. This is maybe not your thing. Is like thinking of the things that you are good at, And I remember early on in being a piano tech, I would tune a piano, and for this, working for a store, and they're like, Ethan, this sounds great, man. This sounds really good. Oh, we're gonna send you out to these customers' homes. It'd be like, this is great. This sounds excellent. You're doing a great job. And I would get upset. I get obsessed with it. I just like, it's gotta be perfect. I love this perfect tuning. It just like makes me feel good to get it tuned right. And the challenges of like, oh, I can tune that spinet and it's still gonna sound good, And I can tune this, grand piano, 9-foot grand piano, and like put my own special touch on it and have some idea of making it better than anything else. Like reinforcing those voices in your head that you realize you're good at something, and that can be your thing.
But
that
let
you
me
can be good
let me
at.
let me put a caveat. I'm just
Yeah.
tell my story.
Yeah.
I learned in a store. The store had a rebuilding shop. I spent 6 months going around the different stations, learning the basics of the repairs. I spent 6 months every day having the owner teach me to tune. I've told before I got terrible tuning instruction. Then they unleashed me on the world. I started working for the stores and I started getting private clients. And I worked for about 6 years before anyone who knew anything was really scrutinizing me. And so I was like you. I wanted to do a good job. I got better. I was convinced I was doing better. I was going to people's houses and people said, oh, that sounds great. And what do they know? They told me I was doing a good job. And I was puffing myself up and feeling I'm really good. And this is a little pitch. All of you who are not in the guild, join the guild. You're making a mistake. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the profession. But 6 years in, a friend of mine invited me to a guild meeting, and I went to this guild meeting, and it was down in Kauai, America, here in Los Angeles. And at that point, George Diefbaugh and Ed Whitting were the kind of factory reps, working at Kauai. And they put on a tuning show, the first guild meeting I went to. And Ed Whitting, who's just an absolute master, he worked for the LA Phil for 12 years. He's a technician's technician. And George Diefbaugh, who ran the piano technology program at LA Trade Tech
So
for
what
many
I've done
years,
is I've
one of the
already
original founding members of the guild. These guys were phenomenal. And
aligned the hand
they
seats
gave
with,
of themselves. They gave back to the
antagonist.
profession. Ed still does.
I don't usually
And,
like to
so they did a tuning thing. They took two
pull up
Kauai
on the
consoles.
screens and
At
know
those days,
that
the Saito tuner had just come out. This is 1978. Ed tuned the piano using the Saito tuner. George tuned using his temperament, and then every note outside of the temperament, he went up and down, tuning thirds, tenths, and seventeenths, making the tenths a little faster than the thirds, the seventeenths a little faster. Never played an octave, just thirds, tenths, and seventeenths. He zeroed his octaves in that way. And I watched the two of them tune the piano. I sat there and watched them both do it. Then I listened to the pianos, and then they tested the pianos. And they played fourths and fifths and thirds and sixths and tenths and seventeenths and double octaves and twelfths and nineteenths, etc. And it was like so mind-blowing to me, because here I was doing a temperament of octaves and fifths and tuning up and down by octaves. And and I thought I was doing a good job. I never played double octaves. I never played twelfths. I never played tenths. I didn't know squat, in reality. And I was exposed to really excellent piano. And that night I joined the guild. And that night I started really the second phase of my learning, when I realized that I had been faking it for all these years, and I had been kidding myself, and I hadn't been around anyone who really was competent to judge my tunings. Right. So, it's really important, if you get a chance to be able to tune for someone. God bless our friend David Anderson. David was an oral tuner. I've been in many classes with David. David gave an oral tuning class years ago that I attended. I sat there with Dan Levitin, and after the class was over, we went over and listened to his tuning and critiqued it. And we had our own critique of David's tuning, but David was willing to tune in front of 1 million people, and he had the big cojones, man, and it wasn't he was willing to put himself out there. And when David was practicing for the master classes that he did for Ethan, he invited me over to come and help him prepare for the classes, and I listened to him tune, and the two of us interacted, and I gave him both my oral and my digital critique of his tuning. And I say to you, if you have an opportunity to have someone who's really good do a critique of your tuning, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of how you're going to be. This is an incredible opportunity to get feedback from someone who knows. The only people who really know what we do are other piano technicians and the very, very occasional pianist. Okay? If you have a chance to have your work critiqued by another piano tuner, do it. Do it. It's, you should build yourself up. You should be confident. You should have a positive voice. You should be like Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people just like me. Yeah, do that. That's the right thing to do. But don't read your press releases. Just try to get some real critical feedback from people who know there's nothing better you can do for yourself. And I got feedback from David. I got people from other technicians. I'm lucky enough to work with Dean Rayburn and Mitch Keel at Cybertuner. And, I've done things with them and I've gotten feedback from them. And they're much better tuners than I am. And it's good. It keeps your chops up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The step of taking the tuning exam for the PTG, right? And saying, taking on that challenge, or
Yes.
taking the technical exam and all of these things, they're intimidating.
They are.
but it's a beautiful step in the thing, and it gives you also an opportunity to Atsundo was in my chapter, which is a blessing, just because he's so dedicated to the PTG and teaching and education, and it gives you an excuse to go to someone and say, hey, I just regulated this action model. Do you mind?
Check it
just
out.
Take a quick look. And you'd be like, and Atsundo's great for this. No. He's got
Look, I too have Atsundo is one of our core beta testers at Cybertuner. I've worked with Atsundo for years. Atsundo is technician's technician.
He's meticulous.
He's meticulous, and he's a professional bass player. He's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But and so we've had a chance one of the things that Dean does, I just want to give a shout out to Dean Rayburn. Dean Rayburn is a giant in our field. Cybertuner is in my opinion, I work for Cybertuner. It's the greatest piece of technology. We're on the verge of giving it a new iteration that is going to kick it up another whole quantum level. Okay, but Dean is egoless about this. Dean he wants constructive criticism. He's created a team of people to evaluate his work. And we have a core group of beta testers. The 6 original beta testers, myself, Dean, Mitch Keel, Dave Lamoureux, Michael Travis, and Kent Swafford. And we would argue among ourselves about how the digital tuning was comparing to our ideal of the ideal tuning. And Atsundo has been part of this core group. And so when we make an improvement in our tuning calculations, Atsundo will give his critique. Kent Swafford will give his oral critique. I'll give my oral critique. I learned so much from these other guys who I say, I'm an adequate oral tuner, but these guys are great oral tuners. And to get their feedback and to listen to it and to the ways that we agree and the ways that we disagree, it's been such a privilege to be able to work with Dean Rayburn on Cybertuner for the last 25 years. And it has been the best thing that's ever happened to me in my career in piano technology.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So we're kind of at about an hour here, and I think it's been pretty awesome conversation.
Well, thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, I'll do that. I've had, I don't know, we'll see. Well, first of all, we'll say thank you and goodbye, because this is going to be another pre-recorded session. It's great to be here with you again.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you.
Carl, and thank you for making the time. He was, very flexible for me to come over and hang out at his house and everything, and very hospitable, and, got me a nice glass of water and ready to go and everything. So that'll kind of conclude the official, portion of this interview for today. And I don't know if you said some nice things about Dean, which I think is really great. I don't know if you had any parting words or anything you wanted to say. We'll have,
Well, listen, I want just about David Anderson. I might not have done this. I do like to talk. You can see you can't shut me up, and all of this sort of stuff. But I don't know if I would have done this. We had Ethan had the first virtual piano technicians conference when the pandemic first began.
That was awesome.
He asked me to participate. But David asked me to participate.
Yeah.
My inclination was, I'm not good enough. What do I have to contribute? I don't know. Maybe I'll screw up, blah, blah, blah. David said, come on, cut it out, Carl. Just put that voice to rest. And I want to just say thank you to David for giving me that, and thank you to Ethan and for what Ethan has done for our community, and for all of you, take risks. The younger you are, the more risks you should take. You're never, your deathbed, you're going to regret the things you didn't do. You're not going to regret the things you did do. So, thank you for including me in this. Thank you for forcing me to get out of my comfort zone. And if any of you get a chance, get outside your comfort zone. You won't regret it.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll just follow that up too really quickly. Young or old, he's taking these risks. I don't think people are aware of it, and we don't know exactly what's going to come of it. Carl and I were working with David, right? And David has, a grand vision for, educational resources for piano technicians, global progresses. And that's why we resonated a lot, because he's like, hey, you're kind of doing the same thing. He had a dream and a vision. And I think that a lot of what helped him get through the cancer that he did through the pandemic is this kind of taking that risk, to try push forward on that idea. And David, we both know David. I don't think it's always obvious when everything's on the camera and it's at the convention or everything. There's a lot of trepidation and fear that he's got to overcome to do some of the the tuning concert or put on a lecture or all these things. So second that as a very embodied characteristic of David Anderson. That's a great advice of just like putting yourself out there and taking risks and pushing it. It's very valuable.
So anyhow, thank you very much
Yes.
for having me.
And then if we do this.
Hey guys. Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, Carl. Carl went to go get a beverage or something. He's he's out of view. But anyways, yeah, great session. Thanks for sticking around a few more minutes today. And we'll tune in again next week. I've got some fun things planned. I'm gonna have I'm talking with the violin maker actually that trained a previous guest of ours. Danny Canetop, the violin maker that trained him, is interested in coming on and sharing a little bit of cross-instrument knowledge. And we might have Danny come on again soon to talk about hand tools and a lot of great stuff planned. So we'll see you in future weeks. And thanks for sticking around, folks. Bye-bye.